your training and nutrition and everything, it can always evolve. Because like for some people, it's just, oh, I know everything I need to do. I just need to go to the gym. You know, and once you start going to the gym, then you realize, okay, there's so many other levels of just going to the gym. Right?
Yeah. And the crazy thing is, a lot of these things that I talk about in this book, they do happen kind of as a side effect to regular training. Yeah. It's just that they do not happen very efficiently. And as you get older, they don't happen efficiently enough to keep up with the decline, to offset the decline. So like as you get older, like as you turn 50, okay, you can still hold muscle mass pretty good. As you turn 60, these systems are declining too much for your body with normal kind of training to stay abreast of the situation, essentially, and to kind of keep up with things. So that's when you start to really notice things dropping off. You can avoid that by doing this kind of training that continuously rebuilds those systems. So you're getting the circulation, you're getting connective tissue health, you're getting more muscle fiber. So all of these things we're targeting on purpose rather than allowing them to happen by accident. And that's a much more powerful way to approach it.
Welcome to the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Podcast with Lee Hayward and Jeff Samataro. Since 1997, Lee Hayward's Total Fitness Bodybuilding has been online helping guys to build muscle, lose fat, and become the best version of themselves. The goal of this podcast is to provide you with real-world practical fitness and nutrition advice to look your best, improve your health, and feel confident in your own skin so you can live life to the fullest without having your body holding you back from doing the things you want to do. So if you're ready to get started, let's jump into the show.
Welcome to the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Podcast. My name is Lee Hayward, and today I am joined by a good friend of mine, Mr. Nick Nilsson, the mad scientist of muscle. And Nick is one of the old school guys, the OGs of online fitness, because I remember back in the early 2000s, that's when I first ran across Nick's stuff. And he had a book back then, I think it was The Best Exercises You've Never Heard Of. I remember checking that out, and a lot of his content back then. And there was only a handful of fitness guys back then, and Nick was one of them. I mean, you could probably count them on your fingertips, the number of guys back then.
Absolutely, yeah.
It certainly exploded since then. So again, Nick, I'm so happy to have you joining in on the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Podcast. Let's give everyone a little introduction of you and your background with fitness.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm known as the mad scientist of muscle because what I do is I experiment with a lot of different things, exercises, programs, nutrition, the whole thing, science-based, but I kind of go ahead of the science in a lot of ways. And what I do is kind of crazy in a lot of ways, but it's all basically with the goal of improving on things, and not just for the sake of doing things differently, but for actually doing things better. So that's kind of one of the big differences that I find a lot of people don't really get, is they see a lot of crazy training on YouTube and on Instagram and stuff, and they think, oh, you're just doing stuff for clicks and likes. I'm like, no, actually, I don't really even care about that stuff. I just want to help people do better in their training. So that's really the focus of my mad scientist stuff. I've been training about 35 years, so I've been at this for quite a while. I first started back in the early 90s, just coming out of high school. And my first year of training, I went from being 145 pounds, skinny cross-country runner, bulked up to 220 within the course of 8 months.
Wow.
So yeah, I came across some good training info, and I also came across cafeteria food. So I was putting away, some days I was putting away 8,000 to 9,000 calories a day. And you're going to gain weight when that happens. So yeah, it's been quite a journey. And then I realized this is what I wanted to do with my life, was to help people train and to come up with new ways to get results.
And the thing I love about your approach, it's so raw and just nothing fancy. It's just the bare bones. I mean, I love watching the videos of you down in your basement home gym. I mean, you got the power rack and just the free weights and just basic equipment. But like, you've been training there for years and making gains and like getting freaking strong. Like some of the stuff that you do, especially like the heavy lockout work you do with the power rack and things like that. I mean, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, no, it's really a myth that you have to go to a commercial gym to get strong. Literally 90% of my training is done with free weights. I think I own maybe 2 or 3 machines, and I don't hardly even use them. So it's primarily stuff in the power rack. It's barbells, it's dumbbells, it's flat bench. And, that's where I push my creative limits too, is there's so many things you can do just with simple equipment, even, with a power rack, barbells, dumbbells, bench, and there's hundreds of things you can do beyond even just the normal stuff. And a lot of it works even better than exercise machines that you find at a gym.
It reminds me of that book, Dinosaur Training. I'm sure you must have checked that out. Brooks to Cubic. Do you remember that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I don't know. I might even look. Speak of the devil, right?
Oh, there we go.
Shelf,
right on.
Training. But that's what like that whole approach you mentioned there, right? It's what it reminds me of. Is just the raw basic gym, like, again, the free weights and just the heavy training, barbells, dumbbells, stuff like that. It's impressive. And one of the things that I gotta say is really cool with you is you get outside and doing some stuff. Like I seen you doing like weighted carries going up and down your street. So
yeah,
your neighbors must think you're a bit of a unique character, to say.
They really do. Yeah. No, it's sometimes when I'm pushing cars up and down the street. The first time I did it, I had 4 people stop and ask me if I needed help.
You need a ride.
Yeah, are you good? Do you need some help? No, I'm good, man. I'm good. The funniest one, though, I have to tell you, is I was doing a barbell carry, just a one shoulder barbell carry, just with the bar across my one side, 165 pounds in the bar. I'm walking down the street. Somebody asked me for directions. Like literally, here's this lunatic carrying a barbell down the street, and you stop and ask him for directions. And I actually gave him directions as I kept on walking. I said, "Yep, around here, that way," and everything. And yeah, pointed them in the right direction as I'm carrying this Looney Tune barbell down the street.
Don't mind this guy, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, I hope you don't live here because this guy's crazy.
Just to see that stuff, because I know I follow you, I see your videos and stuff you post on social media, and we should mention that as well. Like you're active over on Facebook. That's where I usually see a lot of your stuff, because that's my main platform. But I know you have a YouTube channel as well. Yeah. What's your main platforms? Is it Facebook and YouTube, or are you active other places as well?
Yeah, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. That's
Instagram.
What, yeah, I post on all 3 on there.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll put all the links to Nick's stuff down in the show notes if anybody wants to go follow Nick. And I would highly recommend it because he's got some cool stuff. But one of the things that I wanted to address today that kind of really got me excited is you've got a new program out, Return to Prime, which is geared for men over 50, or I guess basically a more mature audience.
Yeah.
And the reason I wanted to have you on the podcast and talk about that is because, my main focus now is helping guys in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond really maximize the second half of life. And I think the program you have could really help in that demographic. Because, yeah. I mean, how old are you, Nick, right now?
I'm 51.
51. Okay.
No.
You're a few years older than me. I'm 46. Yeah. All right. So you're in your 51. And I have to ask, like, with your training, are you still making strength gains in the gym? Like, are you still hitting PRs?
Honestly, I am. I mean, I haven't slowed down. To give you an idea, on my 50th birthday about a year ago, I trained for it, and I deadlifted 500 pounds for 50 reps.
500 pounds for 50 reps.
Now, yeah, I did them.
Explain that for us.
So basically, I did them as singles. So rather than do a whole set of 50, and it's on trap bar. Yeah. But I did a single, rest a minute, single, rest a minute, single, rest a minute until I did 5. And then I rested 2 minutes, and then I repeated those until I got to 50 reps. And it took me about an hour and 10 minutes. And literally, by the time I got to the last rep, I could feel that if I tried to do one more rep, I'd probably hurt myself. So it was like right to the 99th percentile there as far as what I was capable of. And then about 2 weeks later, I kind of kept up with heavy training. Then I decided to go for a PR, and I hit a 605 on the trap bar. And that was the most I'd ever done up to that point. So even at, in 50s, still hitting PRs.
That's impressive. I mean, like anybody who's familiar with strength training and power training, I mean, like that is impressive numbers for sure. And like say to be doing that, at 50 plus, that is wow. So, I mean, that's what you're gearing your new program to Return to Prime is really about, how to maximize your strength in your 40s, 50s, and beyond. Right?
Yeah, how to like literally turn back the clock and gain like you did 20 years ago. And that's kind of my experience in what can be accomplished when you train for it correctly and you use special techniques designed for that purpose.
And I got to ask this as well, because I know a lot of our listeners are going to be hearing this and they're going to say, well, you must be on that TRT or something along those lines, like hormones or anabolics. Like nowadays, I got to just touch on this. TRT is a nice way to say I'm taking steroids, because a lot of guys say, well, I'm on TRT, and then they're asking about dosages and stuff like that, and say, well, just follow your doctor's recommendations. Well, I'm not getting it through the doctor, but I'm on TRT. I said, well, that's not TRT, then, right? It's just a nice way to say, well, old school, hey, I'm just taking gear, stuff that I bought wherever, online or out of somebody's duffel bag at the gym or wherever you're getting.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? I got no problem with somebody wanting to do that. It's just the people who claim that they're not and pass those results on as being achievable naturally. And I can tell you, I've never taken the stuff, and I'm not currently on anything. No TRT, no steroids ever. It's just not something that I ever wanted to do or ever wanted to try to do, because having done all the training that I've done, I know what can be achieved without it. And, with some discipline and some hard training, you can hit some amazing results with it. And you really don't need that stuff if you're willing to do the work without it too.
Wow. So I respect that. And thanks for sharing that. I mean, that's something that, like, a lot of people have this hang up thinking, well, okay, I'm in my 40s or 50s or whatever the age. It's like they almost throw in the towel and say, well, I can't do it anymore because I need hormone replacement therapy, or I need something, or, they're always looking for the crutch or the excuse of why I can't do it, or why someone else is getting results and I'm not getting results. So
it's kind of sad, actually, because that doesn't need to be the case at all. Like, a lot of normal training kind of really won't get you the results you want. It's when you get into stuff like I'm going to talk about here with my new program, is you can actually literally like reset your physiology back in time to where it was, 5, 10, 15, even 20 years ago with direct training protocols.
Let's unpack some basic stuff. Like, I mean, first off, like, what's a typical week of training look like for you? Like, do you have a structured program that you follow, or does it vary a lot? Like,
it varies pretty widely right now. Okay. Right now, I'm actually specifically training for, it's called the INMAN Mile, which it's nuts. It's training to carry 1.5 times your body weight for a mile straight.
Wow. So,
yeah. Yeah. The guy who created it, his name is Inman. He, I think there was drinking involved in this, but he basically said, I wonder if I can put a bar on my back and carry my 1.5 times my body weight for a mile. And the first time he did it, I think he got maybe 400 or 500 yards. And nobody that I'm aware of has ever accomplished it in the world ever. If you look at it on YouTube, there's a lot of people who have attempted it.
Okay.
So basically, the hardest part is doing it nonstop. Because as far as carrying something for a mile, I've carried 500 pounds for a mile. It took me 3 hours, and it was not nonstop. But, wow, carrying that amount of weight for a mile is not a challenge. It's doing it nonstop that's really the challenge. So what I'm doing right now is I do Monday a lot of upper body stuff, more focused on upper body. Wednesday is training specifically for that, where I'm doing a lot of loaded supports, really heavy lockouts, training for breathing under load. Yesterday I did, this is kind of nuts, but I'm basically just standing in the rack. I do a lockout hold. I'm standing there. I had 900 pounds on the bar, and I'm holding it on my back for a minute. This is with a safety squat bar, a Mars bar. So I'm just standing there with the bar for a minute, just letting the load kind of squish down on me. This is training connective tissue. This is training for breathing under load. So it's very specific to that challenge. So when I hit a minute, stop the timer, peel a plate off on either side. Now I'm doing the same thing with about 800 pounds, and I'm holding this for 2 minutes. Jeez. And then hold that for 2 minutes, strip the plates off. Now I got 700 pounds. And I kept on doing that kind of extended drop set. It took me, I could still do 2 minutes up until about 500 pounds. And then when I hit 400 pounds, it was 3 minutes. And then all the way down to 135. So it's basically like about 20 minutes. Just standing under a barbell was my entire workout. So,
holy that's hard to wrap your head around. And for anybody who's done lockout training, like back when I was competing in powerlifting, I used to do lockout training, power rack lockouts. And I think the most that I've ever had on my back in a partial squat lockout was in the 700 pound range. And I mean, that was brutally heavy. So, I mean, I can only imagine. I mean, I can't even imagine really, like, these
Yeah.
numbers, but this is something like, obviously you built up to this over the course of years. This isn't something like,
Yeah, I don't recommend jumping into that weight
oh,
at all.
no.
Yeah, like I've literally been doing like lockouts and stuff like this since more than 30 years now. So, not consistently to this degree, but off and on. And then over just like the past 6 to 7 months, I've been doing it weekly, whether some sort of lockouts or loaded carry training specific to this. So, with the weather, outside right now in Chicago, it's not really conducive to outdoor stuff. Right. So I do a lot of, lockout holds. I actually do heavy loaded carries inside the rack too. Like I'll start at the back of the rack, walk forward and walk back, walk forward and walk back.
Yeah, and some of your video.
Yeah, so the week before this, I was carrying 700 pounds for 2-minute blocks of backing forth in the rack for sets.
That's crazy. I'm going to do footage, overlapping this for the video afterwards, but that's crazy. And I got to ask you again, what was the name of that challenge you called it? The INMAN or?
Yeah, INMAN. The INMAN Mile is what it's called. INMAN.
INMAN Mile. Okay, I got to just... Okay.
Yeah, and I actually tested it with a straight bar one time, and I came to the conclusion that if I tried to do it with a straight bar, I'd break my shoulders, because I tried it with just body weight, and I got about 400 yards. When you're in that barbell position, like a squat position, a lot of that strain is going right in the shoulders, and it could feel that bar just pulling the weight back. It's something that I'm going to do with this version of the safety squat bar called Mars bar.
I want to put it up there on the screen there. So I just went Google image search INMAN Mile. So actually, and you pop up there in one of the results too. There you are.
A couple of the results in the second row there too.
Right? Yeah, some more. Yeah. But are you planning on doing this like with a yoke, or what are you using for it?
Yeah, the picture you can see on the right hand side there. That's the bar that I'm going to be using for this.
That one, that's a safety squat bar, isn't it?
It's a variation of the safety squat bar, called the Mars bar, and it kind of sits differently than a safety squat bar in that it actually sits like a backpack on your back, so it distributes the load more effectively. I've done loaded carries with just the yoke bar, and it works pretty good. This bar is about twice as good for loaded carry stuff. It really sits nicely on there. So I'm going to use this for the INMAN Mile. So it's not a true INMAN Mile because I'm not using a straight bar, but basically in my experience, if I try it with a straight bar, I know I'm going to get injured myself, because that continuous pressure in that position, your shoulders can't handle that stress for that long. It's going to take me about 25 minutes of continuous walking to hit that mile. So
what did you call that bar? You called it a Mars bar? Like
2 R's.
Bar? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure if I search for... Okay, I've never ever used one. I've used the safety squat bar with the straight pads, but this one with the angled pads. That's it there.
Yeah, and I've got the regular safety squat bar too, and I used to use that until I got this bar, and now this is like, okay, this is twice as good as that.
Because that's really like wrapped down around your back more. I mean,
it is. No, you can see how many people have tried it there too, and to my knowledge, nobody has ever done it. So it's absolutely brutal, and it's taken me. Right now, I weigh 200 pounds, give or take a few pounds. So I'd have to carry 300 pounds for a mile. So my goal is to, as I go through the summer, to cut my body weight down to about 170 something, maybe 180, and do the carry with about 270. So it's still gonna be a challenge, but it's gonna be more doable.
Showing some video footage. So talk us through this one here.
So this is the one I was doing last week, actually. This is 700 pounds for 5 sets of 2 minutes. So basically, I'm just walking back and forth inside the rack for 2 minutes. And then after that, after doing those, then I did 335 pounds for 8 minutes nonstop, just to kind of test how far I could push that, to see how long I could basically take being under that load. And I was aiming for 10 minutes, but once I got to about 8 minutes, it was like, okay, this is enough for now. And so that's exactly what this is. And the crazy thing is, 335 pounds, that's not really a light weight. But after carrying 700 pounds for 5 sets of that, it felt like I had nothing on my back.
Jeez.
Like literally nothing. And it didn't even feel like I had a load on my back until I was holding it on my back for about 5 minutes. And then it's like, okay, now it's starting to get there. But based on that, I think if I had done that closer to the beginning of my training and kind of with the 300 pounds, I could have probably gone about 10, 12 minutes. So, I'm about halfway there, I would have to say. But so I'm going to keep on pushing this, and I think by the end of the summer, as I keep on training for this, I think I should be within my capabilities to do. It's still going to be an absolute horrible challenge, but yeah.
Like when you do that challenge, how are you, like, will you have a squat rack set up like out at your house or like in your driveway or something to get that weight up on your back and everything?
I do, yeah. I've got a couple of old 1950s York squat stands that I just set out in my driveway. They're the real old rusty metal things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, yeah, I just set the bar on that. And when I'm doing the long distance stuff, what I'll actually do is kind of tune my nervous system up, where I'll actually, if I'm carrying a training run of 225, I'll actually put 400 pounds on the bar, and I'll do a couple of runs with that just for a short distance, set the bar down, peel the weight off, and then I'll go for the actual carry. So it basically gets your body used to having a much heavier load on your back, so that when you back off to like 200 pounds, it feels like there's literally nothing on your back. Like I was just saying before, it's that gets the high threshold motor units used to having a lot heavier weight on there, gets your connective tissue used to having a lot heavier weight on there. So when you pull the weight back, it feels like you literally have no weight on your back. Like I went from, I think at the end of the summer, I managed, I think 165 pounds for the full mile without stopping. So I put, about 400 pounds on. I did a couple of carries. When I put the 165 pounds on my back, I felt like I could go for a run. Like I was just floating with 165 pounds on my back. It was nuts. Like as soon as I took that weight off and started going walking, I was like speed walking down the street with 165 pounds.
So this is what your neighbors get to see, right? When they're looking out the window, like, oh, there's that
crazy man again.
Right?
I have to tell you though, the funniest one was I probably did this about 8 years ago, where I had to set up plumbing pipes to make my own squat stand that I could actually slide onto the ends of the bar. So I actually could set this bar down whenever I needed to. So I had the Yoke bar, safety squat bar. I had the stands. I had two automobile tow chains dragging from behind there, attached to a wooden pallet. And on top of the wooden pallet, I had a stack of 300 pounds of weight plates. And I was going down the street dragging 300 pounds of weight plates on a wooden pallet as I'm carrying like 400 pounds on my back. And that's when the police drive by.
Did they stop or?
No, the guy just looked at me and I could see him just shaking his head like that with the face palm. It was, he's seen, I know the guy, he's seen me doing stuff like that before, but he was just like, oh my God, what is he doing? Right. Yeah. But yeah.
They won't pull you over because what's the paperwork going to be like?
I know, like, what do you even do?
What are we going to write in the report?
Yeah. It's like, no one is ever going to believe this. It's like spotting a UFO. It's like, they're just not even no one's going to believe this. So.
No, I mean, it's crazy stuff. But the thing is like, this is building real world strength, raw power. And it's impressive to see. And I've done a little bit of that type of training myself, not to the degree that you have, but it's enough that I can appreciate what it is that you're doing. And sometimes I think when people see these kind of lifts and partial lifts, they write it off as, oh, it's ego lifting, or it's not full range of motion, it doesn't count. But like, can you imagine putting that kind of load on your body, even if it's just minimal range of motion or even no range of motion? Your body is just supporting that weight. It's incredible. And I remember the first time I ever did a yoke walk. It was actually down at a friend of ours, Mike Westerdahl. I was training with him down at his critical basic compound a few years ago. Actually, this was several years ago now. It was before the pandemic. We were down there training, and he has a yoke. And I always assumed, like, okay, it's just, I underestimated it. I didn't think it was that hard of an exercise. And the guy set it up, and it was brutal. And they didn't have crazy heavy weight on, but I mean, for my first time doing it, I was like, whoa, okay, this is a lot harder. And I have a lot more respect for when I see strongmen doing these yoke walks with monstrous weights. It's a lot harder than people who have never done it before. We can kind of like think, oh, it's not that big a deal. It's only short range of motion. No.
Well, the thing with most of those yoke things, that when they're like built in and you have the bar and going across, and then you have the weight hanging from the bottom, there's swinging movement in those weights at the bottom. So what I do with the safety squat bar kind of on top, that I have a lot more control over that than, so the actual yoke where the weight is down below and lower is actually harder.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, because it's swinging a little bit and you have to account for that as you're moving. So carrying 700 pounds on my back with that safety squat bar is actually not as hard as carrying 700 on a yoke.
Interesting. Oh,
So it's and you want a real challenge, try a chain yoke.
Chain yoke.
So you have the bar and then you have the weight hanging from chains at the bottom. So you're talking like everywhere. And
place.
I've seen people doing that, and that's incredibly impressive to have any sort of control with that. Wow. And to be able to do, a lot of weight with that, that's really tough to do. That will destroy your core in a good way. The heaviest weight I've ever carried on that bar is 1,000 pounds. I did a walk from one end of my rack to the other end of the rack with 1,000 pounds.
I can't even imagine that. I mean, that's massive weight, but it's something that you build up to, obviously, over time. And like, for someone who's just getting started with this, and I'm sure you probably discussed this in your book as well. Like I went through it and was looking at all the different phases. Now you got workout charts and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, how would you recommend someone to get started with that, especially someone now in their 40s, who's probably 40s, 50s or beyond, like that kind of more mature age group? Mm-hmm. Who very often, these guys are coming back to the gym after layoffs. Maybe they worked out back in the day, like in their college or 20s, 30s, and now they're a little older, like, okay, Dad Bod, haven't been working out for a while.
Yeah.
How would you recommend someone to start off with that? Because like the numbers you're throwing out, like these are high level numbers. Like, nobody's just going to be jumping into there. Like,
this is kind of ridiculous levels of weight, and this is do not start anywhere near this.
No.
But basically, if somebody's kind of just getting back into it, I would actually have them start with just like dumbbell farmers walks or kettlebell farmers walks, because they're gonna be much easier to set up. You don't have to get all set up in the rack. You don't have to do all the partial stuff. You can basically just pick up a pair of dumbbells and start walking. Whether your gym has a track or whether you've got just a straight shot, even in your neighborhood. I've actually seen other people in my area doing stuff like this now too. Really? I don't know if I influenced them to do it or they just kind of picked it up somewhere else, but I've actually seen people out walking with dumbbells. 20, 30 pound dumbbells. That's awesome. Start there, because, set them down when you need to set them down. But just this time under load, this kind of compression, I find is tremendously beneficial. And it's one of the reasons why I'm actually able to keep my strength and connective tissue strength so effectively, is because when you're compressing yourself, whether it's through a farmer's walk, you're actually kind of squeezing fluid out of your connective tissue, which as you get older, which is kind of what the book is about, connective tissue dries out. So your connective tissue and the fluid moving through it doesn't really effectively push through anymore. So healing is a lot slower. The strength is a lot slower. Your connective tissue gets more brittle, which can lead to more injuries and slower healing injuries. Whereas if you're doing stuff with continuous compression, like a farmer's walk, even, that's going to give you so many different benefits. But essentially, it's squeezing that fluid out. So when you set the weight down and decompress, that fluid gets pulled back in. So you're creating circulation through your connective tissue with this compression. And weight-bearing activity, regular weight training is going to do this to some degree, absolutely. But if you can get 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes under this kind of load, that's going to give you even greater benefits. The analogy I like to use is if, say you want to, you've got a tarp stretched out real tight. If you put a weight on the tarp for like, a minute, it's not going to deform the tarp. And that's kind of what the connective tissue is. If you put a weight on there, even if it's a lightweight for a very long period of time, that continuous pressure is going to deform the tarp. So this is kind of that continuous compression is what we're looking for. And that's tremendously powerful in terms of improving your connective tissue strength and overall fitness. I mean, for me, I think long distance loaded carries are the perfect way to do cardio training, just because you get that compression under load, you get cardio training, you get movement, and you get just kind of general strength building in your entire body.
That's fascinating. I mean, I've never really thought of it that way, because I guess most people would just assume that heavy loaded training would actually be hard on the joints. But I mean, the way you're explaining it, like it's actually helping to circulate that fluid within the joints.
Absolutely, yeah. And a lot of it comes with, gradually building up to the weight you're using.
Right.
Making sure that you don't jump in too quickly onto it, and to also make sure that you're keeping good form and you no need to ever push to failure on any of it. And when you're doing it, what I like to recommend to people is kind of relax as you're doing it. You'll see a lot of people doing like farmers carries, farmers walks, or anything, and everything is just clenched up and everything is tight. And when you have everything tight like that, it actually impairs circulation through your muscles. So you're not going to be able to do what you're doing for as long. So the more you can kind of, and, start light with this, and so you can learn to do this and relax under that loading. But the more you can kind of let the shoulders down, let everything kind of stretch out, it's going to actually feel really good when you're done. And you'll feel like you've not only developed your cardio capacity, but you've kind of built up your body work capacity as well. And that's what has really been a game changer for me in the last 20 years, is really starting in with a lot of loaded carry stuff. So.
Oh, you got my gears grinding here of things that I want to start implementing. But one thing that you mentioned there, Nick, that I really want to unpack, you said not training to failure. And I want to really unpack that, because this is a big topic in the fitness industry, especially like in the YouTube fitness. Like, some people are saying, oh, you got to train to failure. Other people are saying, no, we want to have reps in reserve and everything in between. And I know, like, even Mike Mentzer's old videos, like, they're starting to be recirculated and gotten like a lot of popularity. And I have people reaching out to me and saying, why do you think of, the one set to failure method that Mike Mentzer preached and all this? So what's your philosophy about this whole training to failure, and like, how do you implement it for yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. And to be honest, I'm completely non-dogmatic about it. I basically take it for the benefits it offers and the benefits it doesn't offer, and I rotate between failure and not failure. Going to failure is great, but nothing works forever. So if you go to failure a lot, your nervous system is going to hit a point where it can't recover from that. And then your benefit is to not go to failure and focus more on training volume. Mm-hmm. So generally the approach I take is taking advantage of that, where if I'm doing a specific training program where I want to build strength, what I'll do is I'll start with a volume-based program. So I'm actually ramping up the volume, where I'm doing more sets with less rest periods in between. Like, for example, week 1, I'll do 3 sets with 2 minutes rest. Week 2, 4 sets with 1.5 minutes rest. Week 3, 5 sets with 1 minute rest. So it's gradually amping up the volume. Kind of like when you're a car going up a hill, you got the pedal floored. By the time you hit the top of the hill, go over the other side, your body is still kind of catching up to that volume and will be, increasing its recovery capabilities. Mm-hmm. When you come over the other side, then, for example, I'll go to 3 sets with 3 minutes rest, and your strength levels just shoot through the roof. And that's when you push to failure. So with the volume training, you don't push to failure. With the intensity strength training, you do push, well, not at to failure, but very close to failure. With real strength training, you actually don't want to push to failure either, because that, again, tweaks the nervous system too much. Basically, to answer your question, yes and no, and yes and no. And it depends. And there's so many different variables. It's like training to failure works, and not training to failure also works. Right. So why limit yourself to just one when they both work? And they both have their benefits, and they both have their advantages and disadvantages. So you can actually use them to your advantage to progress almost continuously. So,
and let's define, like, what do you define failure as? Because, like, some people have it where they can't move the weight at all. The way I usually recommend or say failure is the point where you can't do another repetition by yourself with good form. Like, once your form starts to break down, that's where I classify it as failure. And like, depending when I'm coaching people, like, sometimes it's safe to go beyond failure. For example, let's say we're doing a bicep curl, and you get to the point where I can't do another strict curl, but I can use a little bit of momentum, a little bit of swing or cheat, and probably complete a couple of cheat reps and still get the negative. That technically is beyond failure to me, because your form is broken down. Other exercises is pretty obvious. Like, if you're doing a bench press and you're stapled to the bench, okay, yeah, you hit failure.
You hit failure.
But even when you're arching your back and your ass is coming off the bench, and maybe one side's locking out before the other, like, technically, like, that's failure. If it would red light in a competition, in a powerlifting meet, that should be classified as failure. But how do you define it? Like, are you kind of similar, or do you have your own definition?
I mean, just like you said, there's multiple definitions of failure. There's different kinds of failure. And just in general with failure, I would say exactly what you're saying, is that it's like task failure. It's technical failure. It's like you can no longer do a good rep on your own with good form. And then you can kind of, basically most of the sets I like to keep to 1 rep before that. So it's like, if I'm doing a bench press, like, I hit the top of the bench, I'm like, okay, I know that if I try another rep, I'm going to get pinned to the bench. So I'm not going to do another rep. Whereas, if you maybe wanted to go to beyond failure, like I said, you'd have a spotter there to help you get past that sticking point so that you could actually progress through that. And, failures, range of motion failure, there's so many different types. It's like failure at the sticking point. That's going to be your technical task failure. But you can get to that, past that sticking point, you can do partials, and you can do partials until you hit failure there. And then you can also do partials and have hit negative failure. It's like the old, what the heck was that? The name of that stuff? It was like 30 years ago. It was like that. It was like a, oh man.
The partial training,
No, it was like a supplement thing where it's like they gave you all these supplements as like a box of supplements. Cybergenics. That's their zero effort training program where basically the goal was, okay, you're gonna have somebody, you're gonna push until you hit failure or positive. Right. You're gonna hold the weight until you hit failure isometrically, and then you're gonna have somebody help you with reps until you hit failure on the negative too.
Holy shit!
And this, unless you're on steroids, you're not going to be able to recover from that as a natural trainer because they wanted you to do this multiple times a week. And it's like, I looked at that program, I'm like, no. And this was in my first year of training. I saw that. I'm like, oh yeah, these commercials, these guys are huge. This works. And I'm like, and as soon as I saw the program, I'm like, I don't really know much, but I know this is not good.
Right.
It's like, I know I can't, that's just, wow. It's like, it was like 6 days a week training. It was just insane.
Jeez. Yeah. But like generally when I'm coaching people, especially guys in their 40s and beyond, I'm on the more conservative side, focusing on, let's be more focusing on consistency over the intensity, and like even stopping short of failure. I'm totally okay with that as long as people are training with progressive overload. And it's like one of the phrases I use for a lot of my coaching students is we want to keep it below redline. Like, like don't have to empty the tank every time. And I say, like, let's just say you're going like 90%, like you're leaving a little bit in reserve, but then it makes it easier to recover and then come back and push a little heavier. Like maybe, okay, we can add another 5 pounds to a lift the following week and make these little tiny jumps or little incremental progress, but you're always like keeping it below red line. You're never just emptying the tank and draining it fully. Yeah. I find like that's a way to, it leaves you hungry, wanting more, because like you complete your set saying, I think I could have done more if I really pushed myself, but I'm going to stop today. Yeah. Right. Leave it here today. And then next week, try a little heavier, like try 5 pounds more.
And you don't feel destroyed and you don't get injured.
Yeah. That's injury.
Right. Once I hit 40, I started noticing that my recovery was getting a little worse. So I switched from 4-day a week to 3-day a week. And that's, so that's been something that I needed to do too, even at the level I'm going. And I actually need to constantly prevent myself from training too hard, because my tendency is to go just nuts and train, really, really hard. So I have to actually say, okay, no, I know this is not a day to push that to that level. So I do have to actually make sure that I don't push myself too hard, because I do have a tendency to do that. And when I do push hard, like when I'm actually training for a performance rather than just training, that's when I really take it to the next level. And I know it's like, okay, I'm just doing this. I don't care about recovery. I'm just pushing it. And, doesn't matter what I do in the next couple of days, even if it's nothing, that's fine.
So you're doing 3 days a week is a typical workout week for you?
Exactly. Yeah. And if you're training kind of below your peak capacity, you can do 4 days a week. In my Return to Prime program, actually, I have a 6-day a week. The phase 3 is actually 6 days a week. But the interesting thing is there's hardly any movement involved in that. This third phase is actually hyperplasia training, which is training to increase the number of muscle fibers you've got. Primarily when you're building muscle, it's hypertrophy, which is increasing the size of the muscle fibers that you've got. But as we get older, we actually lose muscle fibers, primarily the fast twitch ones, especially if you don't use them. And the fast twitch are the stronger, more powerful fibers. So it is a case of use it or lose it. So what this training does is, I don't know if you're familiar with the bird studies on stretch training, where they gain 300% greater muscle growth due to hyperplasia in these bird studies, where they had them doing a resisted stretch hold in birds, it was like hours at a time. So it's obviously you're not going to do that in people, but this is basically I got a protocol to have resisted stretch for a longer duration of time. So there's actually very little movement involved for any of these exercises for the entire 6-day week. So it's actually doesn't tax your nervous system very much. And we actually want repeated muscle damage without recovery, because that's what's going to give your body the stimulus to pile on these new muscle fibers. And this is another case of me kind of getting ahead of the science. There's no direct proven hyperplasia that occurs in humans. There's a lot of indirect evidence for it, but nobody's ever taken the time to pick through the actual muscle fibers of a living person.
Right.
There's not a lot of people volunteering for that, basically.
Yeah.
So this is kind of, extrapolating from animal studies to a protocol that could potentially work in humans. And every time I've done that protocol, in 3 weeks, I've gained 10 pounds without even trying. So I know there's something to it.
I've always been a huge advocate of stretching. I mean, before I got serious into like bodybuilding training, I was involved with martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
So that was part of it then. And that's when Van Damme was a movie star. So everybody wanted to do the splits. And I actually, when I was training for martial arts in my late teens, I did, work up to doing the full splits. Unfortunately, I don't have photos of it because this was back in the digital cameras, but I'm kicking myself. I wish I did. But I really focused on stretching. And even now, I always follow up my training with stretching afterwards. Yeah. But there was back in the day too, remember the DoggCrapp program?
Mm-hmm.
I think it Dante was the guy's name who put the program out. Yeah. That was one of the things he recommended, was doing weighted stretching at the end and really emphasizing the stretch portion of the lift. And there's been a lot of programs over the years emphasize stretching, like even positions of flexion style of training, which was in the INMAN, Steve Holman. And there was another guy, I think, partnered up with it on that. But they had this, doing the stretch exercises where you're getting that full stretch position so it was actually exercises using the fully stretched position. Yeah. But I found by incorporating that, like, it really helped to speed up muscle growth. Like, I found that a very effective style of training when I implemented the stretch aspect, which is most guys, like, stretching is the bottom of the bottom in priority. Like, strength training, cardio sucks, but I do it every now and then. Stretching, never.
That's why I actually love to do this kind of training where you're actually holding stretch positions with weight, because I don't have to do the regular static stretching that way.
Okay.
So for example, what I'll do is I'll take a dumbbell fly. I'll hold the bottom of the dumbbell fly. I'll come up just a little bit out of the bottom of the fly and use about 98% of the force that it would take to finish the rep, to keep going. So you actually want resisted loaded stretching. So not just passive stretching.
Yeah.
This is really the important part of it. Is the key here is, if you're just passively stretching, that's going to, it'll give you some flexibility training, but it's not going to be great for building muscle. What you want is to come out of that stretch just a little bit and use almost enough tension and almost enough force in your muscles to do the rep, but just not quite enough to actually do the rep. So you're actually like actively resisted stretching, and then you hold that for like 40 seconds to a minute, and you keep doing that. And then you just set the weight down. And the protocol that I do actually does it like a drop set, where you lower the weight and then you keep doing that for multiple sets.
Interesting.
So yeah, you're literally hardly doing any actual movement. So it's not hard on the nervous system. So you can actually continue to do that very frequently.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, and like, do you have a section of that in your book, Return to Prime?
I do, yeah. Yeah, it's the entire third phase of the program is just doing that, essentially, with exercises for every muscle group.
If you don't mind, I mean, we could even like just pop it open. I know you sent me the PDF a while back, and I did go through it. I mean, I didn't read it word for word because it's I think you got 239 pages, so this is a meaty, meaty.
It's a solid book, yeah. This
isn't some like 15-page brochure or something.
Yeah.
Like, this is
this
is solid here. I mean, just a second. Let's see if I can return to Prime. I'll share it. Is that coming up on the screen? Let me see.
Yeah, there you go.
Cool. Yeah. So this is it, and we'll put a link to this down in the show notes as well if anybody wants to pick up a copy of this, because I would definitely recommend it. There's some good stuff in here, but like you can just break down the different phases. Like here, the table of contents, for example. We'll go over that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first phase right there you see is angiogenesis training, which angiogenesis means creating new blood vessels. So as we age, as we get older,
Yeah.
we basically lose those small capillaries in our blood vessels.
Right.
So your body basically pinches them off and they go away. So this is a major reason why you lose muscle as you get older, because your body can't feed the muscles anymore. They're not getting the nutrients in, they're not getting the oxygen in, so they go away. So what we're doing with this training is we are rebuilding the blood supply to your muscles. And this is the reason this is in phase 1, is because everything in your body is critically dependent on circulation, muscles included. So by focusing on that first, that kind of sets the stage for everything else we're doing to be even better. So essentially the training is designed to get a lot of blood into your muscles and then put a lot of pressure on your muscles to basically blow out. It sounds bad, but basically we're creating new capillaries in your muscles by squeezing so much blood through there that your body has to create new pathways to feed the muscles again. And this really does work. And it's fun training. It's challenging, but it's if you take normal pump training, this is pump training, multiplied, because the goal is to get the pump there and keep it there for like 10 minutes straight.
So just like give us a quick summary, like what would be a sample, like what were some sample exercises or a sample workout to really focus on this? And how did you pronounce that again? Angiogenesis? Did I say that?
Exactly right. Yeah. I mean, basically a good example for this would be bench press. And you can use literally any exercise that you find effective for that muscle group. There's no specialized exercise for this.
Okay. So
like dumbbell bench press, take a weight you can get for 40 to 50 reps.
Oh, okay.
And then also set aside a weight that you could normally get for maybe 8 to 10 reps. So you're going to use 2 sets of dumbbells here. So you pick up the light weights and you crank out as many reps as you can with good form, focusing on really squeezing the muscle, squeezing the chest, getting a massive pump, and you push it until you're almost to the point where lactic acid basically shuts down the movement. Set the weight down, immediately pick up the heavier weights, which is about 3 times as heavy, and do 2 reps. Now on this 2 reps, you want to really focus on, again, squeezing the muscle and using compensatory acceleration training, which is squeezing and pushing all the way to the top as hard as you can. What this is going to do is locally increase the blood pressure in the muscle to all the blood you've just put in there. It's going to basically jack up the pressure in there and force those new pathways to open up. Wow. And then we do it again 5 more times. So literally we do high rep, 2 rep set, high rep, 2 rep set, light, heavy, light, heavy, light, heavy, continuously for 4 to 6 rounds. The really interesting thing is, and this is something that very few people have experienced, is being able to lift a heavy weight while not being able to lift a light weight in the same exercise. It's the most bizarre feeling. For example, when you hit failure on the last set of the very lightweight, like for example, I did this doing 25-pound dumbbells for dumbbell bench press.
Right.
I got to the point where I couldn't get past the sticking point with 25-pound dumbbells because my slow twitch fibers were exhausted. I set the weight down, immediately picked up the 85s, and I could do 2 reps.
Yeah, that's hard to wrap your head around. So like, how many reps were you doing with the 25s?
The first set was 40 to 50. The second set, it kind of dropped off to about 20. And then it does get lower as you kind of go through, just due to the fatigue. And by the time I was on the last set, it was like maybe 5 or 6. So it's, it's just because, it's obviously diminishing returns as your body builds up the waste products and stuff. But it's the weirdest feeling to hit failure on a really warm up weight and then be able to put out 2 reps with a weight 3 times heavier.
How long a rest between the failure with the 25s before you did the set with the 80s?
Literally nothing. The time it takes to set one down and pick up the other.
We're talking like seconds.
We're talking 4 or 5 seconds.
So that was enough time for you to, I guess.
Yeah. The slow twitch was fatigued, but the fast twitch were still ready to go.
Bizarre, but I mean that really it's such a unique concept, because most people, if they do light training, it's light training only, or if they do heavy training, it's heavy training only. They don't work it back to back like that.
Yeah.
I mean, this really got my gears grinding. Like, would you just do this with the single exercise, or could you do it with different exercises as well? Like like I'll just throw this out there. Say like I was doing body weight squats and a barbell squat, or bench press and a push up.
I actually include that in the program too, where you can use whatever combinations you want. Where, like you said, if you want to do a bodyweight squat for very high reps, and then immediately go to a heavy barbell squat or a heavy dumbbell lunge, that's what you do, because that's, you're hitting generally the same muscles, maybe slightly different movement pattern, but the key is the blood supply in there. So the actual resistance doesn't really matter as long as it's light and heavy. So it doesn't matter if you're getting progressive resistance. It really doesn't matter at all. It's just the relative resistance that we're looking for and the relative loading on the muscle to accomplish the blood supply increase in the muscles.
Wow. Well, it's fascinating. I mean, something I'd like to definitely incorporate for myself. And I'm just thinking of different ways to doing it, like a barbell squat and a bodyweight squat. I think that would be so much easier than physically switching weights in between.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's actually what I recommend for stuff like squats, is like don't do barbell stuff primarily, unless you could potentially do set up a rack with a light barbell for Anderson squats off the rail, and then a heavy barbell off the J hooks. Right. I've done that one too, and that works pretty well. But just doing bodyweight squats, it's really that simple. Just do a bunch, do heavy, and then go back to the bodyweight squats, and it makes it easy to do in a regular gym too. I mean, people are really going to wonder what the heck you're doing, but
it's not actually crazy. I mean, but
it's this, and this protocol is very much based in science. Like I did a ton of research to put together these training protocols to achieve the maximum benefit of these targeted goals. So it's like blood supply, it's connective tissue, it's hyperplasia, it's nervous system efficiency and activation. All of these protocols are actually based on real science. Obviously I get ahead of the science some way because no one's really ever done exact studies on some of this stuff, but all of this stuff that I'm putting in here is literally all science-based. It's not just like pulling stuff out of thin air and hoping, this works. It's like, no, there's references for everything in here. And, some of it's on animal studies. So I had to kind of take my knowledge of, insane training that I've done over the years and kind of basically distill that into effective training protocols. But to put all together some of the results you can get with this kind of training literally puts your body physiology back 20 years from where it was.
That's crazy. I love this. I mean, I love geeking out on training like this. It's just so cool. Another section, I mean, there's so much here we want to cover, but like say, obviously I would encourage anybody who's interested in this, definitely pick up a copy of the program, because this stuff is, there's a lot to unpack here, right? We're just scratching the surface. But the next section there, connective tissue training, like let's just talk about that a bit, because this is something as we get older, joints, tendons and ligaments, like how many people go, I got back pain, I got knee pain, elbow pain, shoulder pain, like every moving joint pain.
Honestly, this is huge, because as I was saying before, your connective tissue dries out as you get older. The fluid supply, you literally get dried out, so everything has less strength and it heals slower. This can actually reverse that, and this is again based on clinical protocols and training protocols that I've seen in research, and I've just kind of taken them to the next level as far as making them functional in a gym situation. And for example, with this connective tissue training, the first 3 days are literally stuff like I was talking about, where you just hold a bar on your back. On day one, you're holding it for 3 minutes. Then you set it down and rest for 3 minutes. And in those 3 minutes, you do like maybe a dead hang from a chin-up bar, or you sit in that hanging ab chair and just let kind of everything decompress. So you're physically creating that bellows effect, which is pushing the fluid through. And even more powerfully, you take, I recommend doing this, taking a connective tissue based supplement like collagen, gelatin, or vitamin C a little before your training program. So you get this stuff in your system, you get it processed, you get it flowing through your bloodstream. Now you are creating this circulation in your connective tissue, and it's putting the nutrients right into where they're needed. Where normally, say for example, you might get 5% of these things where they're needed. Now you're getting like 80% of these things where they're needed. And this has the potential to actually heal up old injuries. I've had people do this section of the program and tell me this knee injury from 20 years ago that it's been bugging them. Doesn't bug them at all anymore. It's like, I'm not even injured anymore. I don't feel it anymore at all, because of and it's very easy to do. You're literally just doing stuff where you're standing there or you're holding a weight. You're just supporting a weight and letting that compression and decompression do the work for you to push those nutrients where they can help heal your body and your connective tissue.
That's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, to some sample exercises, I guess, like the squat lockouts. Would you do like bench press lockouts and things like?
For example, with bench press, that's another good one. Is you actually don't want to do a regular bench press lockout where you're holding the arms, out to the side like that in a normal press. You actually want to do a close grip, so that you're stacking the weight, stacking the joints. Because if you're holding out here, then your triceps are going to fatigue way too fast. Whereas if you're locking them out here, then gravity is basically just pushing straight down through the wrist, elbow. You're hitting all the upper body joints in one shot right there. And I even go so far as to recommend you use a weight belt, loop it around your elbows. So you're basically not relying on muscle support to hold that weight.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So the goal with these connective tissue lockouts is to actually use your muscles as little as possible and let your connective tissue and your bones take up the tension. Now, a lot of people may get freaked out about the sound of that because they say, oh, you're locking out and you're losing your muscle tension. It's harmful. It's actually not. If you're locking out with a lot of force and you lose muscle tension, that's when it's potentially harmful. Like if you're slamming a bench press at the end and you lose that tension in the muscles, that's when you can potentially run into issues. But if you very gently lock out this weight, then relax everything, let the weight just load the connective tissue, that's actually very beneficial for your connective tissue because that's what's creating, like we said, the bellows effect, the circulation through that connective tissue.
I mean, when you actually break it down like that, it kind of makes sense because, like, if somebody's standing, just literally standing up, that's literally what happens. Like, we relax, and our joints are supporting our body weight, like our quads and hams, and like nothing gets fatigued when you're just standing up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's what we're going for with these various types of connective tissue training. And so that's three of the first days of that phase of program, and then we actually do include like partial range of motion training, where you're doing like the top few inches of a bench press or the top half of bench press, where you're doing again, not to failure on any of the partial stuff.
Right.
So and then we're doing some loaded carry stuff as well to get dynamic connective tissue training, where you're doing like a farmer's walk, whether it's light or heavy. I include the option you can do either one of those. You can do like really heavy farmer's walk with the trap bar, or you can do light dumbbell farmer's walks, that kind of thing. But just getting some movement under a more continuous kind of load, like we had talked about before, that's also excellent for connective tissue as well. So it's a very interesting type of training.
Yeah. Oh, that is fascinating. I mean, I know we could go on and on about this, but it's just so interesting for sure. And what else? I mean, you got other phases there. I mean, I know there's hyperplasia. Okay, this is another interesting one. Just kind of break this down, like give us an overview of that one.
Yeah, so basically this goes back to the resisted stretching that I was talking about before. As we get older, we do lose muscle fibers, and we lose the fast twitch muscle fibers. So basically the stretch type of training can activate what are called satellite cells, which can be used to rebuild and regenerate additional muscle fibers. So when you're a hard gainer, it's generally because you don't have a lot of muscle fibers. When you're an easy gainer, somebody who walks into the gym and benches 300 pounds the first time they touch a weight, the people that everybody who's a hard gainer really hates, we're basically going to be turning a hard gainer into an easy gainer by doing this. So the more muscle fibers you got, the easier it is to build those muscle fibers up and gain muscle. If you're a hard gainer, you don't have a lot of muscle fibers, you have to build those up to like 80-90% of their potential. If you've got double the muscle fiber numbers, you get the same results by building them up to 50% of their potential. So it basically, as we get older, we turn into more and more of a hard gainer physique. This kind of resets that back to an easy gainer physique by increasing the number of muscle fibers we've got. So it's, it's a cheat code for building muscle as you get older. The more muscle fibers you've got, the easier it's going to be no matter what age you are.
Wow. So what would be some sample exercises that people would do for this one?
This would be stuff like holding the dumbbell fly at the bottom, like the resisted stretch. An incline dumbbell curl is a good one. Shoulders are a bit tougher because there's not a lot of good stretch position ones with that. One that I like to do is basically holding the bottom of the dumbbell press and just focusing on relaxing the triceps as much as possible and just kind of letting that bottom stretch position get into the meat of the shoulders. You can do that with a barbell. You can do it with dumbbells. Some of this stuff is easier with dumbbells. Some of it is easier with barbells. Stuff like hamstrings, you can do a lying leg curl, you can just hold that bottom position.
Mm-hmm.
You can also do like a stiff-legged deadlift. That one kind of gets tougher on the lower back, which is why I tend to gravitate towards doing like holding the bottom of a lying leg curl, just because of that.
Yeah.
You know, I've tested the stiff-legged deadlift stretch like that, and it does get tough on the lower back. So you can do it if you've got a strong lower back, but generally speaking, I recommend you do it on the leg curl machine. But yeah, literally you're going through everything. You're doing tricep stuff. You're doing like overhead tricep extension stuff and holding that.
So a lot of this is similar to the program I mentioned, the old DoggCrapp program that was very popular back in the late 90s, early 2000s. I can't remember exactly when the time frame, but it's fairly old. It's around the 2000 era, I believe, where DoggCrapp was really popular, and the weighted stretching and stuff.
Yeah, and in the book, I credit all the people who these concepts that I've learned from. It's like, there's so much that I've basically taken from all of these different areas, and stuff of my own, stuff of research, coaches and strength coaches over years and years who kind of developed similar protocols. I'm like, okay, I'm going to take the good stuff here, take the good stuff here, take the research here, and distill it all together into these very targeted physiological goals.
I love it. I love how you do that. It's kind of like that old quote that Bruce Lee had, like, what was it? Take what's useful, discard what's useless, and add what's uniquely yours. And that's basically what you did here, right? Like
100%.
Accumulation of several different methods and sources, and you kind of like put it together and added your own unique spin to it. And it's fantastic.
Yeah.
So that's the big one. I mean, this is again, going back to where was it? The hyperplasia. Like a lot of programs I mentioned that incorporate the weighted stretching, like even the position deflection. There's other programs over the years really emphasize this. Even when you look at some of like Tom Platz's old training, like he used to do some crazy stretching, like extreme ranges of motion with sissy squats and different things like that.
Yeah.
And obviously it worked for him. I mean, obviously, genetics play a big role here, but still you can see some carryover in some of the different styles of training over the years.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is a lot of people used to think it was due to fascial stretching.
Yeah.
That you could actually, there was, fascial stretching. I used to think that myself too, until I really did a lot of reading on how tough fascia really is. I mean, this stuff is like battleship steel. It's just crazy tough. And stretching it for even a minute or so is not going to really deform it to any great extent. Basically what happens, in my opinion, is that the stretching, because it is effective, it's not because you're stretching the fascia, it's because you're causing such strong hypertrophy in the muscles underneath the fascia that as they grow, they actually expand the fascia continuously over time.
Okay.
I go back to the analogy of the tarp on the rock.
Yeah.
A weight on the rock, even if it's heavy, is not going to deform that fascia as much as if you have a medium-sized rock for a long period of time.
Right.
So if you're stretching it for like a minute, you're just going to get stretching. It's not going to affect the fascia really at all. But if you have muscle pushing that fascia apart from the inside all the time, that's how you're going to get the expansion of the fascia. And that's one of the primary reasons muscle memory exists. I think it's not because there's no real memory in your muscles. It's because the fascia is already expanded. You don't have to fight through the fascia anymore to build that muscle. So you can actually build muscle at the rate at which your body is actually capable of. That's kind of another brain bender.
Yeah.
But that's my thought about what muscle memory really is. It's not that your muscle remembers what it was or anything. It's that the fascia is already expanded because it does not contract once you've expanded it. So your body can actually build the muscle back to where it should be at the rate where it's actually physiologically capable of doing.
Wow. That makes a lot of sense. And I have to be totally transparent. Like I wrote articles and blog posts back in the day talking about stretching the fascia.
I did too.
There was a lot of like, I remember one guy, John Perello. I think that's how you pronounce his name.
Perello, yeah.
Perello, is it? He had the supplement line and stuff back in the day.
Yeah.
And he mentioned a lot of this, stretching the fascia. I remember reading articles and stuff from him, but like that was a common thing, fascia stretching. But what you're saying there makes a lot of sense. It's basically what we're trying to achieve here is actually the hyperplasia. Like you're trying to create more muscle fibers.
Yeah.
Stretching the The
Yeah,
fascia.
and it's not like the fascia is stretching, but it's not stretching while you're stretching it. It's
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just because that, it's expanding from the inside that it's pushing that fascia out and stretching it over a
Right.
much longer period of time, where fascia can actually take the time to rebuild, and the collagen matrix can actually expand. It doesn't happen in that period of a minute. You can't hold an extreme stretch long enough for this to happen because you'll get injured. Whereas your muscles are continuously pushing out from the inside. That's 24/7,
Yeah. But the interesting thing is regardless of how we explain it or justify it, like the results still worked. Like
That's the trick, is you get the
right?
same result.
Yeah, like
different mechanism.
exactly. So we could think we're stretching the fascia, but as long as you're doing the act of stretching, you're still achieving the same result. And as we learn more and more, I'm sure as science involves even more stuff, like maybe what we're saying here is like, oh, they had it all wrong. It's actually, this is what's happening. But if it's working, who gives a shit? Right? Like
Exactly. Yeah. It's like the end result is you're building bigger muscle. That's the goal. That's fine. Whether the only difference is once you know the mechanism, then you can more appropriately target the mechanism.
Absolutely. This is kind of like where the whole bro science and real science collide, because the bro science, they're like, this is the way we're doing it. It's working. We're getting results. Let's keep going. And then, of course, the real science, if you will, well, we want to break everything down and analyze it and studies and meta-analysis of blah, blah, blah.
Where's your proof? Where's your evidence? It's like,
are we getting results, right? Are you getting bigger? Are you getting stronger? Is it working? Are you seeing results?
Yeah, and that's where a good portion of what I do is, I like to say it's ahead of, getting ahead of the science. It's like I take the science and then I kind of just extrapolate, what I think is the reason why it works. It's not obviously proven, but it does work, and here's why I think it works, and I think it makes sense from a logical perspective.
No, this is crazy. I love this stuff. I mean, it's so fascinating. It's so much more than just eat right and exercise. Like a lot of people. There's always your training and nutrition and everything. It can always evolve, because like for some people it's just, oh, I know everything I need to do. I just need to go to the gym. And once you start going to the gym, then you realize, okay, there's so many other levels of just going to the gym. Right?
Yeah. And the crazy thing is, a lot of these things that I talk about in this book, they do happen kind of as a side effect to regular training. It's just that they do not happen very efficiently, and as you get older, they don't happen efficiently enough to keep up with the decline, to offset the decline. So like as you get older, like as you turn 50, okay, you can still hold muscle mass pretty good. As you turn 60, these systems are declining too much for your body with normal kind of training to stay abreast of the situation, essentially, and to kind of keep up with things. So that's when you start to really notice things dropping off. You can avoid that by doing this kind of training that continuously rebuilds those systems. So you're getting the circulation, you're getting connective tissue health, you're getting more muscle fiber. So all of these things we're targeting on purpose rather than allowing them to happen by accident. And that's a much more powerful way to approach it.
I think a lot of this too, Nick, is when you think of people going through training, like when they start off brand new, we hear people talking about the newbie gains, in your first year of training.
Yeah.
And I think because we're stimulating all these different aspects at a low level, but it's unique muscle stimulation, and it's high enough where people are achieving remarkable progress in their first year, but then they're probably peaking out in terms of like the connective tissue training and the hyperplasia training, like all this just due to traditional regular workouts. Your 3 sets of 10 with a conventional gym machine workout. Yeah, okay, that works great initially, but it's easy to plateau, and now you need to like think outside the box and how to provide more stimulation, more progressive overload, especially for all these different components.
Yeah, especially as you get in your 40s, 50s, and 60s, you need to address these systems, these underlying systems, and then go back to your regular training, and it'll work better. It'll work just like you did before, rather than half as good. It'll work just as good.
Yeah. Oh, this is fascinating. And another one that I want you to explain for us, this nervous system training, nervous system efficiency training, like this.
So this is the last and final phase of the program. And as we get older, our nerves die. That's a fact of life. Our nerve cells, they die off and they aren't regenerated. They don't get replaced. I couldn't figure out a way to regenerate them. If I could, I'd be a multi-millionaire, because then you could cure paralysis and stuff. So what we're going to do here is take the nerves that we've got and make them operate more efficiently. Take the motor units we've got and make them operate more efficiently with higher activation. The best example I like to use with this is elite athletes. As you, if you have a weight class athlete who needs to stay under a certain level, they don't get stronger by building more muscle and gaining weight. They get stronger by improving connective tissue strength one way, and also improving nervous system efficiency and activation. So they could potentially go from, say, 80% or 70% activation, let's say, up to 80% efficiency and activation. If you're lifting 100-pound weight, that's now another, whatever percentage higher, just based on your nervous system operating more effectively. So let's say an average person has a 60% efficiency. As we get older, that's continuously dropping. So it's, I don't know what the percentage is per year, but that's continuously dropping. What we're going to do here is use specific training styles to bring that back up. So it's very similar to elite athlete, strength athlete type of training, where you're actually retraining your nervous system to operate at a higher efficiency level. And we're doing it in a way that's very safe. It's not, it's not going to hurt anybody. It's going to be operating well within capabilities, but it's just how you do it and how the program is structured that basically retrains your nervous system to operate at higher efficiency and higher activation. So there's some really, really interesting stuff in this section too. One of the most powerful ones is what I call single rep cluster training, where you're going to take a weight you could normally get 3 or 4 reps with, and you're going to do it for 20 reps. So what you're going to do here is do 1 rep, rest 20 seconds, do 1 rep, rest 20 seconds, do 1 rep. You're going to do that for a set of 20. So you're giving your body just enough time to kind of regenerate the ATP, which is the fuel for your muscles for those powerful contractions. What you're also going to find is that it's going to train your nervous system to operate at a high level. The first rep of any given set is actually not your best rep. It's your second rep, because the first rep, your body is kind of learning the movement path that it needs to do for that rep. So the second rep, your body's already activated those nerves. It knows what to do. So your second rep is going to be better than your first rep, as long as you account for fatigue. And by taking, that off the table, pretty much by doing sets of singles, you're actually doing single reps of perfect reps with a relatively heavy weight. So you're training your body to, for example, like a bench press, say you're using 250 pounds. You do 1 rep of 250, you do rest 20 seconds, reset 1 rep of 250, rest 20 seconds, and you repeat that. So each time you do that rep, your body further ingrains that movement pattern into your nervous system. It's just like when you're a beginner and you're learning to do dumbbell bench press, and you see people doing this as they're, raising the weight. Right. That's the nervous system inefficiency showing. As you do more and more times of this, your body learns how to do it more efficiently. And all of a sudden, the next couple of times you're doing smooth reps and you're stronger. That's what we're doing with advanced trainers. You're doing smoother reps and you're stronger in that specific programmed nervous system movement pattern. And it works like crazy.
Wow. The first time I really heard people talking about training the nervous system and stuff is like power lifters and Olympic lifters and stuff, because they would be doing multiple sets of low reps and for that purpose, to train the nervous system and to train it to fire at a higher level, I guess. The typical bodybuilding style workouts where you're taking sub-maximal weight and you're doing high reps, they're taking close to maximal weight and doing multiple sets of low reps. I mean, it's so counterintuitive. I remember, I think I actually got this program from a local powerlifter, but it was a deadlift program that involved just multiple sets of single rep sets. Right. And it was crazy. Like, that was one of the most effective deadlift programs that I ever did, just multiple sets of singles. Yeah. So counterintuitive coming from a bodybuilding background, because you're not trained to failure. There's not a lot of time under tension. And, over the course of the workout, there is, significant time under tension, but still it's counterintuitive training for most people.
Yeah, you almost don't feel like you're really doing much. Yeah, and it's very counterintuitive, but it actually is. Yeah, because you're training a very different capacity in your body rather than the muscles. You're training the nervous system, and I also want to tell you about one other one. Yeah. It's just really it's a contralateral neuromuscular and activation. So,
Oh,
sorry, contralateral antagonist neuromuscular activation, I should say. I misspoke.
Yeah.
But essentially, through your in the middle of your brain, there's a connective tissue called the corpus callosum, which as you activate your left side from the right side of your brain. So the signals go through that side. So to do a dumbbell curl with your right hand, it's your left brain that activates it. What happens is 10% of the nerves that activate that also activate the other side on the antagonistic muscle group. So if you're doing a curl with your right bicep, if you activate your left tricep at the very same time, you get 10% greater muscle activation, which means if you're doing a dumbbell curl with 50 pounds, activate the tricep on the other side. Now you can do 55 pounds instantly. So it's literally an instant activation increase in your nervous system like that. Yeah.
Have you actually incorporated this yourself, like doing single limb exercises and then contracting the agonist opposing muscle?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's in the program. This kind of training is in the program specifically with muscle, exercises for each body part, for each muscle group. So for example, if you're doing bench press, what I do with this, there's a guy, I think his name was Anthony Scappaticci. He calls them scapjacks, where he was doing, like, say you do a cable curl with one hand and a push down with the other hand.
Yeah.
So you're getting activation on both sides. I actually changed that up a little bit to hit higher threshold motor units. So you're doing a regular dumbbell curl on the right hand and you're doing a partial with your left hand. So you take 2 50-pound dumbbells or whatever dumbbells you'd normally use.
Right.
Hold them at the bottom, normal start position, do a curl with your right arm and do a partial kickback with your left arm. So you're just bringing the weight up like a few inches just to get the activation on those high threshold motor units. And the weight just goes, whereas normally it might've been, a struggle to get up. All of a sudden the weight just goes wham right to the top. Really? And it's like an instant, holy crap, what just happened kind of feeling when the first time you do it. Yeah.
That's fascinating, Nick. I mean,
yeah.
You've got me excited about working out all over again.
Honestly, this stuff is fantastic. It's so much fun to do because it's so different, especially if you've been training for a long time. You've been training 20, 30 years. Yep. You've never seen anything like this stuff. And it will reignite your passion for training again because you will feel everything in a whole different way. Everything is a totally different approach to literally anything I've seen anybody else doing. And you get the results to show for it. And sometimes you get the results like instantly, like with this nervous system hack, you'll notice it instantly. And, I've set up with a dumbbell bench press, for example, setting up in the power rack or Smith machine, you're lying on your back, you're doing like a partial inverted row. So you're getting the activation of an inverted row and you're pressing with the other hand. So you're getting the activation in your back and you're pressing, doing one arm press. But because your body is locked down and anchored down, you're actually in a good pressing position still, and then you're pressing all the way to the top, and you're literally, going from 100-pound dumbbell to 110-pound dumbbell instantly with that.
And like, how would that carry over in terms of muscle stimulation? I'm just curious because, okay, is it still stimulating new muscle growth, or are you just like unlocking strength that you never had before?
This is targeted for strength. This is nervous system. Actually, a really good analogy for this is overspeed running, where you may have seen old movies, like I think they might have showed this in one of the Rocky movies or something, where he basically tied him to a car and he's running behind the car. The car is driving a little bit faster than he normally would be able to run. So you're getting your body acclimated to moving at a faster speed. So your nervous system is then getting used to moving at a faster speed. I don't know if this kind of stuff is still used by, sprinters or anything like that. I really don't. But overspeed as a concept is definitely being used. I've seen
a lot of sprinters. What they'll do is they'll use a treadmill and they'll set the treadmill at faster than they can normally run, and then they'll stand on the rails, obviously,
and then
jump on and start sprinting flat out, and like you have the treadmill to push them faster than they normally would, and then of course they'll jump off onto the rail.
That's exactly what this is, but for weight training, where you're basically training your nervous system to function at that higher level, so that when you go back to regular training, your body remembers how to function at that higher level because it's been there before.
Jeez,
so that's what this whole phase is about, is using specific techniques that train your body to operate at a higher level. And because you've strengthened your connective tissue in the prior phase, your body can handle that force now, whereas maybe before it couldn't. That's, that's why every phase kind of stacks up in this order. So circulation is the base of everything. Connective tissue is important for the stretch phase as well, because, stretch is a more vulnerable position for your body. You need to have stronger connective tissue. So it basically goes through these phases in the best order they can possibly do to benefit you the most. So by the time you get to that last phase, you're firing on all cylinders.
Right.
Your connective tissue is strong. You have more muscle mass. You've got better circulation for recovery, and you can really build some serious strength in that last phase.
Oh man, this is exciting, because if we just took one of these phases in and of itself, like, you can get great results just by any one of these phases, but the way you have it like synergistically stacked together and done in a complementary fashion like this, you can see like that would just amplify the results even more.
Yeah. And going back to what I was saying about the volume and what you were asking about, the volume and the training to failure, the first phase with the angiogenesis is more volume. The second phase with the connective tissue is more intensity. Third phase is more volume. Fourth phase is more intensity. So you can see we're actually following that undulating pattern of volume versus intensity, failure to not failure, and that kind of thing. Yeah. So it's actually very much in line with how the body functions and operates. So you just to clarify, I highly recommend going through it all together in a straight block of training. You don't necessarily have to. Like, you could do the 3-week phase 1, do something else, then do 3 weeks of phase 2, then do something else. So you don't necessarily need to commit to 3 full months of training, because I know that can be tough for somebody to want to do or have the capability to do. But you can do these phases individually as well. You will probably get better results by doing them in order, but it's not 100% necessary to get the benefits.
Each of these phases are a 3-week phase?
Yeah.
Okay, so it would take us 12 weeks to go through the entire system. Like
3 months straight, yeah.
I mean, that's doable. I mean, for sure. I mean, like, if someone wants to commit to a 3 months training block, like, hey, here we are starting off the new year. Someone could follow this, throughout the next 3 months and really set themselves up to making some really impressive gains leading into the summer. Yeah. You could build a nice foundation of some new muscle gains. Yeah. And then if you want to focus on maybe a fat loss phase leading into summer, I mean, like, that could be a really cool way to stimulate some new growth, trim out some body leading into summer. I mean, and
literally the beauty of this program, it makes everything else you do after more effective, because your physiology is like it was 20 years ago, and going back in time 20 years, you wouldn't want that, So it's like an anti-aging program for your muscles.
And the workouts, like, give us some timelines. Like, if I were to follow this program now, like, what kind of a time commitment per workout, and what kind of time commitment per week would I be looking at?
Usually it's about 4 or 5 workouts a week primarily.
Okay.
Generally about 45 minutes to an hour. I like to keep them kind of within that reasonable level. The third phase is a bit more intensive in that it's technically it's 6 days a week. And if you did the full program, it would be an hour and a half workout each time.
Okay, now, so that's pretty aggressive.
That is more intensive. I did include a way where you can scale it back a bit if that's too much time, to just an hour each time. And you could potentially, cut it back to however many training days you wanted. But I found best results with the 6 days a week, because you can recover from it, because it's essentially not a lot of movement involved. If you can really focus on doing that just for 3 weeks and know that it's just going to be 3 weeks, and after that you're going back to a more general kind of approach, then you really want to do that, because you're going to get fantastic results from that section by doing it as is. I was going to say, if you need to, if you find that your recovery is not quite keeping up with the program, you can insert rest days as needed. That's no problem at all. You could potentially turn a 3-week phase 1 into a 4-week phase 1, and that's no problem.
Just stretch it out, more rest.
Exactly. Add in rest days as needed. It's not critical that you push yourself to the maximum here. We're looking for physiological changes, and we want to give you enough recovery where you're going to actually put in the effort to be able to put in the effort to benefit from those phases and achieve those physiological changes.
Well, that's good to know, like, to have the flexibility, because everybody's at different fitness levels, and some people 6 days a week in the gym, no problem. Other people find, hey, like 3 days a week is my max. Some people maybe even less, depending on your work capacity and fitness level. And of course, then you got to factor in real life schedule,
exactly,
outside responsibilities. Like how would this affect, like, for example, like say someone has a physical demanding job, or if they're involved with other sports or activities outside of the gym? Like, do you have any suggestions for working around it that way?
For as far as like if it's elective, you want to try and minimize it if you can. Some of the phases, it's not going to be that big of a deal. They're not going to be really any more demanding than a normal training program in terms of how that goes. For example, like the connective tissue training, most of that is really, it doesn't feel all that hard. You'll hardly feel like you're doing anything when you're just standing there with a weight on your back.
Right.
You're going to feel like, okay, I feel good, but I don't feel like sweaty and tired or anything.
Right.
So it's good to know that, you don't feel like you have to be sweaty and tired after all these workouts, because you may not even feel like that at all. So it's in terms of like additional capacity that your body is demanding, it's different than regular training and how it affects your body. I would say the most physically demanding phase is actually the first phase, because you're doing a lot of reps, you're doing a lot of movement. Whereas the second and third phase, there's not a lot of movement. In the fourth phase, you're more nervous system intensive.
Right.
So that is a bit more demanding in that. And you'd really want to kind of, if possible, back off on other stuff, so your nervous system can really recover well, because your nervous system takes longer to recover than your muscular system. So, but yeah, that's pretty much the deal with that. Is it's very doable. It's comparable in difficulty and recovery to a normal training program.
That's good to know. And this is something that I think a lot of people probably, it's like a game changer or eye openers. Effective training doesn't always have to be physically hard. It's not feeling the most beat up after a workout doesn't mean that was the most productive workout.
Absolutely.
A lot of times it can be very counterintuitive. And I know when I trained with like a lot of power lifters and strongman and weightlifters and guys like that, like they would take very long rest periods. And sure, when they did their actual working set, they were pushing themselves, but over the course of the gym session, I mean, it was pretty relaxed. There was a lot of downtime in between those max effort lifts. And sometimes they wouldn't even be pushing max effort. They'd be just focusing on technique or whatever, so it's not always going in there and grinding yourself to a pulp.
That's the difference between you look at CrossFit and powerlifting training.
Yeah.
CrossFit is I think for people who really want to feel like they've done something, whether it's beneficial or not.
Yeah, exactly. Whether it's beneficial or not. Yeah.
And, not to bag on CrossFit, but a lot of it is not particularly science-based. It's just, throwing a lot of stuff at the wall and seeing, making yourself tired. And a lot of CrossFitters, they don't train specifically in CrossFit workouts. They train the different components, especially the really high-level guys. They'll train powerlifting. They'll do the long time between sets. They'll train Olympic weightlifting. They'll take long time between sets. And then they'll kind of adjust that as they go, as they get towards competition to, more closely mirror what the events are going to require of them. A lot of the really high level guys, they don't actually train with the events. They actually train the components of the events because they've got time during the day to do that. Whereas you go to a normal CrossFit box, people are training the workouts. They're training the specific workouts, and they can work really, really well. And, you just got to be aware of recovery. A little bit of a tangent, I guess.
Sure.
But in general, powerlifting training is actually very boring to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of downtime for sure. And people coming from a bodybuilding background, or again, like a CrossFit background or something where it's always go, 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 they almost feel like I'm wasting my time here, resting several minutes between sets or whatever, doing low reps and stuff. It's like, oh, it's a waste of time. They just want to be go, go, go and feel that the busyness is effective, but it's not necessarily.
Not necessarily, yeah.
Right. Oh, this was a fantastic conversation, Nick. I mean, I know we could probably stay here for hours more and unpack this, but I mean, thank you so much for sharing and just unpacking the whole program there.
Yeah.
And I know Return to Prime. I mean, I love that whole concept and what you just shared. And you know what? I'm seriously considering giving this a shot for myself now to go through this training program and just to see how it works.
Absolutely. I think you should. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any questions as you go through it too.
Hey, maybe we could even do a follow-up podcast, once I've actually gone through and experienced some of this. It's interesting because like I've gone through similar, like a lot of the concepts you talked about, like I am familiar with them and I have dabbled with it in other forms of training, but not to the extent that you've explained it and put it together into this system. So I'm excited to give this a shot for myself. And again, for anybody watching this wants to give it a shot, return to Prime. I'll have a link to it down in the show notes below. And if you want to follow Nick, again, we can what is it? You mentioned you're on Instagram, on YouTube, and on Facebook. Those are your three main platforms.
Those are primary ones I'm on. Yeah.
Mad Scientist of Muscle. Is that your tagline usually, or your?
Yep. Yeah. It's I'll hit you up with the different links there too. Yeah. So.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. We'll put all that down there. I mean, I encourage you to follow along with Nick because he's posting like on a regular basis, sharing his training clips, from down in his basement home gym. I mean, I love it. Right. So do you train at a commercial gym at all, or is everything done in the basement and out on the street?
It's literally 99.9% either in my basement or out on the street.
Yeah.
So I think I've been to a commercial gym maybe once in the past 5 years.
So yeah, that we can say you work out in the basement and out on the street.
Yeah. Honestly, it's I did used to enjoy going to commercial gyms.
Yeah.
But now it's like, okay, I've got all my equipment here. I know where everything is. I've got so many different accessories and toys that I can play with in my basement. It's like, I don't really need to go to a commercial gym. I've got like 2,000 pounds worth of weight plates. I've got everything I need down here. So it's, and I know some people need the social aspect of it, but for me, I just love doing it. So the process for me is the reward. So.
And I could see the style of training that you're doing, if assuming that you have the equipment available, would work really well in a home gym setting, or at least not as busy a commercial gym setting. Like the gym that I train at, I mean, it is a commercial gym, but multiple power racks, lots of bars. I mean, it's a well-equipped gym. Like I could get away with
good
stuff. Yeah. I used to hate, like one of the gyms I trained at before, like they'd have one power rack. So I mean, if somebody's using it, like you're shit out of luck, right?
Yeah, you're just standing there twiddling your thumbs until they're doing what they're doing. Yeah, so.
You don't want to be like that. So you want to have multiple pieces of equipment. Yeah. So that's one of the nice things about if you have a good equipped gym, or if you have your home gym, then you're set to go.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like your home gym, if somebody wanted to set one up like that, it's not extravagant. I mean, I know you mentioned like you got a lot of weight plates and stuff, but it's power rack, barbells, dumbbells. Like it's nothing extreme.
Yeah. Yeah. It's literally, those are the things. I've got a cable crossover that I don't really use very much. Right. I've got a Smith machine that I haven't really used very much either.
Yeah.
But yeah, literally 90% of my stuff is like in the rack or barbell, dumbbell, that kind of thing.
So, I mean, I know a lot of guys that even like within our coaching community and stuff, people that I work with, I mean, a lot of them have home gyms and probably, a similar style of home gym is what you're working from, and you can certainly make it work, right? It doesn't have to be some crazy extravagant gym. You think like all the different machines and all the different cables and
not at all. Yeah, no, it's literally, you can do everything in this program with rack, barbell, dumbbell. That's it.
Nice.
Literally everything.
Oh, this is awesome. And we're going to get ready and clue it up. But thank you so much, Nick, for sharing this. I mean, I'm fired up. I'm excited to give this a shot myself. And like I said, I'll be hitting you up with questions as we go through it.
Man, happy to.
All right. Well, thanks again. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Podcast. And if you did, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the podcast. And if you know someone who could benefit from today's episode, please feel free to share it with them. I mean, if you could help us to spread the word, that's going to help to get this message out there and allow us to create more content like this and reach more people and just create that positive impact all around. And if you would like some help with your own fitness goals, maybe it's building muscle, losing fat, improving your health, getting in your best shape. If you would like some help with that, then feel free to reach out to me. I have my contact information down in the show notes below. And you can book in for a free one-on-one strategy session coaching call with me, and we can discuss a realistic action plan that's right for you. And if I feel that you're a good fit, I may invite you to come on board and join our VIP coaching program. And if it's not a good fit and I feel that I'm not the right person to help you, then I'm not going to give you hype or BS, but I will point you in the right direction to somebody who can help you. I mean, I've got a large network of people in the fitness industry. So if I don't feel that you're a good fit for our coaching program or that I can help you, I'll be able to point you in the right direction to somebody who can. So either way, at the end of your free strategy session coaching call, you'll walk away with better insights on what you need to do next in order to reach your health and fitness goals. So that clues it up for today's episode. and we'll be back again next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time with another episode of the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Podcast. Take care. Over and out.